I'm 38, single dad to a 10-year-old daughter named Sophie. Her mom passed away 5 years ago after a long illness, and since then, it's just been the two of us. I work from home as a web developer, and I've structured my entire life around being present for her, school drop-offs, lunchboxes, PTA meetings, bedtime stories, the whole deal. So when Sophie started asking to stay late at school for extra help with math, I didn't question it. Honestly, I was kind of relieved. She's a bright kid but struggles with numbers, and I figured maybe the school had set her up with a tutoring program I'd missed in the flood of emails. She mentioned her math helper once or twice, called her Miss Abby. Said she was young and fun and way better at explaining fractions than the classroom teacher. I asked if Miss Abby was a new hire, and Sophie shrugged. Said she didn't know, but lots of kids liked her. That didn't seem strange to me. Schools rotate staff in and out all the time. Volunteers, interns, whatever. As long as Sophie was getting help and coming home smiling, I didn't dig deeper. Until last week. She left her iPad on the kitchen table, unlocked, while she ran to shower. Not snooping, just went to plug it in, but I noticed a string of texts in her tutoring group chat. The messages weren't from a teacher. They were from Miss Abby. And what she was saying to these kids, it wasn't tutoring. The messages started off innocently enough. Study tips, encouragement, smiley faces. Then they got weird. Jokes that felt too adult. Phrases that gave me a chill. You're my favorite little math wizard face blowing a kiss, or don't tell your dad, but we're gonna sneak ahead of the syllabus smirking face. I told myself it was probably just some poorly trained teaching assistant trying to bond with her students. But something didn't sit right. I scrolled further and realized there was no school domain in Abby's email. Just a generic Gmail. And worse, no other adult was in that group chat. I asked Sophie later that night who Miss Abby really was. She got quiet. Nervous. Said she wasn't supposed to say. Now I was rattled. A stranger messaging my kid every day, arranging one-on-one sessions at school, and she didn't even want to tell me who this woman was? Something wasn't adding up. And that's when I decided to dig. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that damn winking emoji from Miss Abby. The casual tone, the secrecy, it all screamed wrong. I got up around 3 a.m., opened my laptop, and started going through the school's website. Faculty list, newsletters, even old PDF attachments buried in email threads. I searched for Abby, Abigail, volunteer tutor, nothing. No mention of her. Not once. Next morning, I walked Sophie to school like I always do. We were halfway there when I casually asked if Miss Abby was a teacher at her school or someone from outside. She paused, then said something I'll never forget. She said she's not really a teacher, but she helps like one. She said teachers have rules, but she can be more fun. My stomach dropped. I kept it calm, told Sophie I'd walk her to the front office because I needed to ask a question. She didn't protest, just handed me her lunchbox and skipped ahead like any other day. At the office, I asked the secretary about Abby. I phrased it carefully, like, hey, my daughter's been working with someone named Abby for extra math help. I wanted to get in touch, can you give me her school email? The woman looked at me blankly. Said they didn't have anyone named Abby on staff, in tutoring, or even volunteering. I asked again, more firmly this time. She double-checked, still nothing. That's when I felt the blood drain from my face. I showed her the chat screenshot Sophie had left open the night before. She squinted at it, then frowned. No one in our system uses personal accounts like this, she said. This isn't someone working with us. I don't even remember leaving the building. I walked home in a daze, clutching my phone like it might explode. I didn't want to panic, but the truth was already forming in the back of my mind. My daughter had been talking to a stranger. Alone. 4 weeks. Maybe longer. Back at home, I did what any panicked parent would do. I opened her iPad and took screenshots of every single message, every attachment, every link. I even recorded a screen capture, just in case. Some of the messages were harmless, sure. But others? Don't tell anyone I helped you with that quiz. It's our little secret winking face. I wish all kids were as sweet as you. Grown-ups can be so boring. There was even one where Abby had offered to meet Sophie outside of school. Said she knew a cool bookstore nearby with math puzzles and private study spots. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just weird anymore. This was dangerous. I picked up the phone and called the police. The officer on the phone was calm, too calm, like this was routine. He asked for screenshots. I emailed everything, then sat on the edge of the couch, just staring at the wall, trying to quiet the roaring in my ears. He said they'd send someone over that afternoon. Said I was right to be concerned. That was the moment it hit me, this wasn't paranoia. This wasn't overthinking. Someone had wormed their way into my daughter's life under a fake name, fake role, fake everything. I paced around the house, waiting for the clock to move, jumping at every car door outside. By the time the detective showed up, I'd printed out hard copies of the chat, highlighted the creepy messages, even labeled them with sticky notes. He flipped through them slowly, nodding now and then, but I could tell he already had a theory. The weird part? He wasn't surprised. He said this kind of thing happens more than people think. Predators don't always come through screens in the dead of night. Sometimes, they're bold. They walk through school doors, volunteer, charm everyone, including the kids. The scary ones don't look scary. That stuck with me. He asked a million questions. When Sophie started talking about Abby, how often they met, if Sophie ever left school grounds without me knowing. I said no to that last one. At least, I hoped it was no. Then he asked the question I hadn't let myself think yet. Had Sophie ever been alone with her? I couldn't answer. The school bell rang at 3:30, and I drove like a man possessed. When Sophie saw me waiting outside, her face lit up. No idea anything was wrong. No idea the last 2 months of her life had turned into a nightmare investigation. I didn't tell her yet. Not fully. I asked about Miss Abby again. Sophie seemed nervous now, like she thought she was in trouble. Said she hadn't seen her that day. Said Abby messaged her that morning saying she couldn't make it. The detective had warned me this would happen, that the second the person behind Abby sensed danger, they'd back off. That's when I knew they were watching us. Maybe through Sophie's online activity. Maybe from inside the school. Or worse, maybe from somewhere nearby. That night, I barely let Sophie out of my sight. I turned off the Wi-Fi. I put her iPad in a drawer. I checked every lock in the house twice. And then, just after midnight, I got an email. Not from Abby. From someone else. An address I didn't recognize, no subject line, just a message. I told you not to get involved. And an attachment. It was a photo. Of Sophie. Taken outside the school gate. From less than 24 hours ago. I stared at the photo so long I forgot to blink. Sophie, standing at the school gate, hair tucked behind one ear, hugging her backpack. Smiling. Completely unaware. The timestamp in the corner chilled me, 3:32 p.m. That was minutes before I picked her up. Meaning whoever took it had been there. Watching. Maybe from a parked car. Maybe standing in plain sight while I scanned the crowd. My blood ran cold thinking of how close they'd been, how close I had been, without realizing it. I forwarded the email to the detective immediately. Then I called. Didn't care that it was 1 a.m. His tone changed the second I told him about the photo. That kind of escalation meant whoever this was wasn't just playing games. He promised to bring in a digital forensics team to trace the email. But then he asked a question I hadn't thought of. Had I noticed anyone new hanging around lately? Someone overly friendly at the school. Someone who always showed up at the same time. A car that didn't belong in the neighborhood. I wanted to say no. I needed to say no. But my brain betrayed me. I remembered something. 3 days earlier, I'd seen a red SUV parked across the street from the school when I dropped Sophie off. Nothing weird, except the engine was running, and the person inside never got out. I figured it was a parent running late. But then, I saw the same SUV again. That afternoon. Parked at the corner near the crosswalk. Same spot. Same dark tint on the windows. Still running. And now that I was thinking about it, I'd seen it again yesterday. Same car. Different time. Always watching. I told the detective everything. He said they'd start checking traffic cams, talk to the school, increase patrols in the area. But the truth hit me square in the chest the moment I hung up. I wasn't waiting for police anymore. This had become personal. I was being hunted. Not just by someone hiding behind a screen, but by someone willing to stand close enough to my daughter to smile back at her camera. I crept back into Sophie's room, just to check. She was still asleep. One hand on her stuffed dinosaur. Completely at peace. I felt sick. I watched her breathe. Tried to memorize it. Just in case. Just in case that photo was more than a warning. Because now, I didn't think this was just about Sophie anymore. I think whoever was behind that screen knew me. And they were just getting started. I didn't sleep. I sat by Sophie's door all night, every creak in the house setting my nerves on fire. By morning, I was a wreck, but I didn't care. I kept her home from school, called into work, and spent hours reviewing every photo, every memory, every detail that didn't sit right. I had to be missing something. Something obvious. Around noon, the detective called with the first real break. The email? It had been routed through multiple VPNs, bounced through servers in 3 countries. But there was a crack in the mask. One of the accounts used to sign up for the tutoring group chat had a recovery phone number attached. A local one. He didn't say whose. But I did. I recognized it immediately. Because it was my brother's number. I hadn't spoken to him in almost 4 years. Last I'd heard, he was getting clean, trying to straighten his life out after spending most of his 20s floating between sketchy apartments, dead-end jobs, and half-truths. We'd cut contact after a blowout fight when he showed up to Sophie's birthday smelling like weed and vodka, slurring his words in front of the other kids. I told him he wasn't welcome in our lives until he got help. He never came back. I told myself he was just a phase in our lives I could shut out, close the door, move on, keep Sophie safe. But now, his number was tied to Miss Abby? The detective asked if it was possible he was using someone else's account or phone. Maybe. But the pit in my stomach said no. And then something else clicked. Years ago, before Sophie was even born, my brother dated a girl named Abigail. They were toxic, always fighting, always breaking up, but he was obsessed with her. After they split, he crashed at my place for a while, totally wrecked. Said Abby was the only person who ever really got him. I hadn't thought about her in years. But suddenly, Miss Abby didn't feel like some random fake persona. It felt deliberate, personal, like a twisted tribute. Or maybe a way to get close to something he thought belonged to him. The detective asked me to dig up any photos or records I had of my brother. They wanted facial recognition from nearby traffic cams and school surveillance. I sent everything I could find, old pictures, even a college ID I'd forgotten I had. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Sophie walked into the room with something in her hand. A bracelet. Plastic beads, stretchy string. Abby made it for me, she said. She gave it to me the day she helped me study for that math test. I took it from her gently. One of the beads had a tiny camera lens buried between the glittery letters. My knees went weak. Sophie wasn't just being watched at school. She'd been watched inside our home. I don't remember dropping the bracelet, but I must have, because the sound it made when it hit the hardwood floor snapped me out of my trance. Sophie looked confused, asked if something was wrong. I lied. Told her I just didn't want the beads to fall off. I told her to go play in the living room while I fixed it. Then I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at the thing like it might explode. A camera. On a child's bracelet. I could see it now, tucked between the purple heart and the bead that said BFF. Hidden in plain sight. I texted the detective a photo. Less than 5 minutes later, he called me. His voice had that clipped edge, no more gentle tone, no more caution. He told me I needed to leave the house. Now. Not in an hour. Not after lunch. Right. Now. They were sending officers to collect the bracelet and sweep the property. He said it was likely connected to a local network, which meant someone could be watching us live. I grabbed Sophie, said we were going on a surprise trip, tossed a few things in a bag, and we left. Drove straight to my sister's house 2 towns over. Didn't explain much. Just told her to please not ask questions yet, and to keep Sophie inside. While we were driving, the detective called again. They had something. The red SUV had been spotted near the school again the day before, same make, same scratches on the bumper. This time, it had parked for only 10 minutes, then drove off after Sophie came out the gate with me. The license plate? Registered to a woman in another state. But the registered owner had reported it stolen 4 weeks ago. Right around the same time Sophie started math tutoring. The pieces were clicking together now. Whoever this was had planned everything, down to the vehicle, the timing, the fake persona, the access. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't impulsive. It was strategic. That's what made it worse. The detective was now convinced my brother, or someone tied to him, was behind it. They were tracking his old known associates. Pulling financials. Scanning footage from convenience stores and gas stations near the school. And then, late that night, I got one final call before bed. The school janitor had come forward. Said a man had been sneaking in once or twice a week, claiming to be a visiting substitute aide. He said he didn't think much of it because the guy wore a staff lanyard and always had a clipboard. Seemed legit, polite, harmless, but he never signed in at the front office. And his name was never in the records. They showed the janitor a photo of my brother. He recognized him immediately. Yeah, he said. That's the guy. Only, he said his name was Mr. Abbott. Abbott. Abby. It wasn't just a tribute. It was a disguise. And I'd just found out the man I cut out of my life 4 years ago had been standing inches from my daughter. In her school. Wearing a fake badge. Giving her gifts. Messaging her when I wasn't looking. Watching her. And if we hadn't found that bracelet? I don't want to imagine what would have happened next. I didn't sleep again. I just sat on my sister's guest bed with Sophie curled beside me, the bracelet sealed in an evidence bag on the nightstand, like a ticking bomb. I kept staring at the door, at the windows, at the hallway, half expecting him to show up out of nowhere. The detective texted me early that morning. He knows we're on to him. We just don't know how far he's willing to go. I didn't answer, because I already had a gut feeling. This wasn't just about watching Sophie. It wasn't just about some creepy obsession or twisted attempt to reconnect through her. No, this had layers. And the deeper we went, the more sick I felt about how personal this really was. They got a warrant to search a storage unit registered under a fake name, one tied to a burner card my brother used years ago. The location? 15 minutes from my house. And what they found there made my blood run cold. Toys. Hundreds of them. All unopened. All new. Puzzles, books, little gifts, some of which Sophie had mentioned getting in the last few weeks. Stuff I'd assumed came from the school. Little reward trinkets for good behavior. Some of the toys even had her name written on them. In handwriting I recognized. His. Next to that was a journal. Pages of it. Notes. Logs. About me. About Sophie. About our routines, what time I woke up, when we left for school, what we ate for dinner, how often I checked her messages. Even when the water bill came. What days we had visitors. What friends she played with. It was methodical. Detailed. Beyond disturbing. But it was one page in particular that made the detective call me, this time with his voice shaking. It was a drawing. A sketch of our house. And a floor plan. With entry points circled. Windows. Doors. Even the gap in the back fence I'd been meaning to fix for months. And underneath? A note written in block letters. Wait for the right night. I felt like my stomach had been ripped out. He wasn't just watching us. He was planning something. They now considered this a credible abduction threat. Which meant two things. 1. We were officially placed under temporary protective custody. 2. He was going to act soon, if he hadn't already tried. But then came the worst part. Sophie had a secret email account. One I hadn't known about. He'd helped her set it up. Walked her through it, told her it was just for tutoring. She used it only at school. And on it? There was one unsent draft. One she'd typed, but hadn't yet sent. It read, "Okay. I'll come. But only if Daddy doesn't get mad." I read that message over and over until the words blurred. "Okay. I'll come. But only if Daddy doesn't get mad." Every part of me wanted to believe it wasn't what it sounded like. That maybe Sophie had misunderstood. That maybe it was just innocent. But deep down, I knew. That wasn't a message a child writes on her own. That was groomed language. Soft. Measured. Trained. And it meant she had been thinking about going. With him. The detective confirmed my worst fear. The message had been drafted 2 days before we found the bracelet. If we hadn't acted when we did, if she had hit send, if he had come through that back fence. I can't even finish that thought. By now, the investigation was fully active. My brother, real name Dylan, was listed as a suspect in a child exploitation case. His photo was circulated to local schools, parks, transit hubs. Plainclothes officers were watching our house, the school, even my sister's neighborhood in case he tried something reckless. But we were already too late in one way. He was gone. Vanished. They tracked the stolen SUV to a motel near the state line. Dylan had checked in under a fake name. Paid cash. He'd left hours before they got there. The room was nearly empty, except for 2 things. A hoodie of Sophie's that had gone missing from the school lost and found. And a burner phone. The phone was wiped clean, no contacts, no texts. But it wasn't empty. It had one video saved in a hidden folder. Just one. I only watched 5 seconds of it. That was enough. It was footage from inside our house. Taken from the bracelet camera. It showed Sophie sitting on the floor of her room, playing with her dolls, humming to herself, completely unaware. I had to leave the room. I couldn't breathe. The idea that this man, my own brother, had been watching my child like that, recording her, saving it. I wanted to break something. I wanted to scream. I wanted him caught so badly I didn't care what happened to him afterward. The detective said Dylan had likely been preparing to take her. Not just meet up. Take her. That note under the sketch, "Wait for the right night," was the key. He'd been watching, planning, choosing the moment. They believe the night I found the email was going to be the night. That still shakes me. Because it means we stopped him by hours. He's still out there. And every minute that ticks by feels like a countdown. But now we know what he wanted. And why? Because the next thing the police found was a letter. Hidden under the motel mattress. Folded. Handwritten. Addressed to me. The letter was written in ink that had smudged at the edges, like he'd folded it with sweaty hands. The paper was creased and stained, as if it had been carried around for weeks before he finally left it behind. It started with 3 words that made my heart seize up. "You left me." That's how he began. Not "I'm sorry," not "I didn't mean to," not "this wasn't what it looks like," just a bitter, boiling accusation. He said after our fight 4 years ago, after I kicked him out of Sophie's birthday and told him not to come back, everything fell apart. He said I'd abandoned him, just like everyone else always did. That I acted like he was toxic. Like he wasn't worth saving. That I had a daughter now, and he was just a mess I didn't want around her. He said he understood now. He said he didn't blame me. But then the letter took a darker turn. He said Sophie was his chance to fix everything. That he didn't want to hurt her, that he loved her like family, because she was family. And family, he wrote, should never grow up hating you without knowing you. He said he just wanted time with her. Alone. Without me poisoning her against him. Without the rules. He said the school was easy. That he knew how to slip in, when no one was watching, and how to get kids to trust you. Said that after a few days, she was already laughing with him. Sharing things. Calling him cool. He said it felt like a second chance. But the most chilling part? He never once called her by name. He only referred to her as my way back in. Like she was a door. A key. Not a person. Not a child. He ended the letter with a promise. I'm not done. She still likes me. That means it's not over. You'll see. And that's when I realized something. This was never just about obsession. It wasn't even about Sophie. It was about me. This was revenge. A long, calculated punishment. Not by violence, but by corrosion. He wanted to rot my life from the inside. Make me feel helpless. Unsafe. Paranoid. He wanted to take the one thing I built after cutting him out, and stain it. He wanted to be part of our lives again. Even if it meant crawling through the cracks like a disease. The detective said the letter proved intent. It also proved delusion. They've put out an interstate warrant. They believe he's traveling alone, possibly with another identity. But now they think he's got contacts, people who might have helped him move from motel to motel, slipping through state lines. Maybe even someone who knew about me, and let it happen. This goes deeper than I thought. And the scariest part? We still don't know where he is. It happened 3 nights later. Sophie was asleep. I was in the living room on the couch again, still not ready to sleep in my own bed. The house was locked, alarmed, reinforced in every way it could be. And yet, when the knock came, I still froze. Not the doorbell. Not banging. Just 3 soft knocks. Measured. Calm. Like whoever was on the other side wasn't in a rush. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe at first. I just waited. Heart pounding so loud I was sure Sophie could hear it from down the hall. Then it came again. 3 more knocks. I grabbed my phone and texted the detective, "Someone's at my door." No ID. No sound. No movement. He called me immediately. Told me to stay inside. Officers were 5 minutes away. But I wasn't waiting. I checked the security feed from the app on my phone. My cameras, new ones I'd installed 2 days ago, showed nothing. Completely black. And that's when I realized. The outside wires had been cut. He was here. I walked slowly to Sophie's room, hard in my throat, and locked her door behind me. She was still asleep, wrapped in her blankets, breathing steady. I sat beside her and waited. 4 minutes later, flashing lights filled the front yard. I heard voices. Commands. Then running. A scuffle. Then nothing. A few minutes later, the detective called again. His voice was tight, controlled. They'd caught him. He'd been crouched by the front stoop, wearing gloves, carrying a pocket knife and a small bag of supplies, zip ties, duct tape, candy bars. That was all. But it was enough. They tackled him before he made it out of the yard. It was Dylan. He didn't resist. Didn't say a word. Not until they were loading him into the back of the cruiser, when he turned to one of the officers and said, "Tell him I would have been better than he ever was." They charged him with attempted abduction, stalking, possession of surveillance equipment, and a list of other crimes too long to memorize. He's being held without bail, pending a psychiatric evaluation. Sophie still doesn't know the full story. I told her Miss Abby had to go away. That she'd broken some school rules and wouldn't be coming back. That it wasn't Sophie's fault, and that she was safe now. She asked if she did something wrong. I told her no. But I'm not sure she believed me. I've since installed a full home security system, changed our routines, moved work meetings around. My entire life now revolves around one question: what could I miss next? And the worst part? I still check the front camera every night. Even though he's locked up. Even though it's over. Because I know how quickly it can happen. How easily someone can walk back into your life, smiling, holding your child's trust like a gift, only to twist it into something you'll never forget. And now, every knock at the door makes me flinch. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't strangers. They're the ones you used to love.